Hey guys, welcome to Conscious Conversations. Big episode this week, and I'm really looking forward to introducing it to you. But a little bit of background into what Conscious Conversations is. We've been going a few years now. I think we've got about 35 episodes up, and the whole basis of Conscious Conversations is to catch up with people who are living from a place of authenticity, that have been successful in doing so and are living from their values, whether it's wellness, leadership, culture, mindfulness, parenting, whatever it is, this need for us more than ever, to find who we are at our heartfelt, from a place of soul and spirit, and to live from that place and to remove and let go of some of the conditioning and some of the beliefs that we believe perhaps were ours but aren't. And those people are the ones that I try and catch up with and talk to. I just think that's really important for us more than ever right now, because there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of messages, there's a lot of voices, and there's a lot of beliefs being thrown around that sometimes I think we hold on to as we think they're ours, but they're not. And when we can, sort of detangle ourselves from that, that's really powerful. And, I do a lot of this work as a life coach and as a meditation teacher to get people clear on who they are. I think that's critical. And then allowing them to build their capacity through mindfulness to be more present, more aware, and have a choice in how they respond to moments. So that's what I do. You can check some more about what I do on lukemclean.net as a coach and a meditation teacher. I'm also a father of 5, so I get the challenges we're all facing, especially as parents and trying to work from home right now in Victoria. It's a tough time. But today, I've got a really awesome podcast, and it's aimed at mental health, and it's, specifically aimed at men's mental health. I catch up with Tom Derickx. Now, Tom, you might know the name Tom Derickx. He used to play football for both Richmond and Sydney. He spent 5 years on an AFL list. He's also in the band called Kayex, which is an up-and-coming sort of dance electronic band. And we talk about how that's been really positive for him in the importance of creativity in his life and that as an outlet. But most importantly, we talk about him being an Are You OK ambassador and the work that he's doing with Are You OK this week, especially with Are You OK Day being September 10, and what he's done in that regards, and talking about his mental health challenges and how he created a voice and opened up, and the power of vulnerability, having friendship, having the right support networks. We discuss a lot of that and the need for that right now, especially with male mental health. So without further ado, my name's Luke McLean, this is Tom Derickx, and you're listening to Conscious Conversations. Tommy, mate, wanted to start, as I like to do with more of my podcast guests, growing up, mate, sort of what was that like for you, and what were some of the values and some of the, beliefs that sort of were in your family, but also the sporting groups that you worked in? Like, how was that growing up?
Yeah, I had a really great upbringing. I was very fortunate enough to have a solid family, two great brothers who are also great mates. So growing up, I grew up in a little country town called Dunsborough, which is, for those that don't know, it's about 3 hours south of Perth in WA. So growing up, little coastal town, went to a pretty small little Catholic school down there. I think there's about 20 students when I started. I remember I was 4 years older than my younger brother, and we were in the same class. So
right.
He argues to this day that he's probably just as smart as me because of that, but I'm not sure. But it was those little things sort of helped me go up with really strong sort of family values, I think, and especially in a small town, you kind of know everyone, and that sort of honest, real talk was kind of the way I was growing up. Brought up, with my dad was a farmer and mum grew up in the country as well, so it was a pretty simple sort of upbringing. But we pride ourselves on that humour and honest feedback, and we just had a ball growing up down there.
And mate, like that upbringing, that simplicity, how important and central to the community was sport then for you, at the early ages?
Yeah, it was big, Luke. It was a huge part of our life. I remember throughout school, it was either we'd have surfing camps or we'd have football. So, and it was always the whole town was involved. Dad would have been one of the coaches, and my best mate's dad would have been the other coach. So, sport was just part of life. I mean, if we weren't playing footy, we were surfing, and we were all surfing together. So, that community aspect is something I kind of miss now, especially when I can't get home. But I think it's an awesome way to be brought up around not only a football community, but in that small country town. But sport played a huge role in the bloke I am today, based on a lot of the team aspect of life, and I like to see myself as a bit of a leader because of that.
It's a really interesting insight, Tommy. Were you aware, of just how good upbringing you had at the time? Especially now, you know a lot more, but having that small community, but also having, constant connection to the ocean, grounding with your feet in the sand, and I'd imagine very little devices or electronics back then. Do you reflect back on that of how good it was for you?
In reflection, definitely, Luke. I think if I had my time again, I would have enjoyed it and appreciated it a lot more, because I think growing up, it's kind of all you know, so you think it's pretty normal. And especially in the town I was in, it was sort of like even going to Perth was pretty foreign. It was something big. And living in Sydney now, looking back, I'm super grateful for that upbringing. But I wish I sort of enjoyed it a bit more growing up. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but just didn't take it for granted as much. Especially now being able to get home. It makes it a bit harder. I definitely appreciate the lifestyle that I had now, and mate, it was awesome. It was awesome. Even just thinking about it now, I haven't really thought about it for a while, but it was a special upbringing. It's a special place, and maybe at the time I did take it for granted a little bit. Yeah.
And is that something, mate, if you ever did have kids or were going to bring up a family, you'd want to get back to a bit more simplicity, or do you think the city life sort of suits you now?
Yeah, I think the city life suits me now in what I'm doing with the music stuff, with my band Kayex. I think we kind of have to be in this little bubble of energy, and it's a bit of a melting pot of gold in the city of Sydney. I mean, ideally we'd probably be in America or something right now, but Sydney will have to do. And I think, to answer your first question, I think I'd love to end up back in a small country town, probably back in WA, bringing up a family, because I think it is quite important to bring your kids up the right way, and nothing wrong with bringing them up in the city, but I think it should be a reflection of the person you are as well when you're bringing your kids up. I think I'm a country boy at heart, so I'd know how to bring them up in the country, that's for sure.
And what was that like for you, Tom? Like when you get to go to Perth and, football sort of takes you there almost as a full-time, what were some of the key learnings or insights you got as a young guy going there? And I'd imagine you were playing representative carnivals and stuff. Like, how was that for you?
Yeah, it was quite bizarre. I remember there was a lot of representative footy back then. So if it was representing the Southwest in the sort of country carnivals, or it was representing like WA in my juniors, it was always quite. I thought it was quite big to even do that, and then to sort of play waffle football, which is the state league over there. That was sort of something I aspired to, but thought it was a pretty far-stretched dream, and it probably took until my older brother Nick started playing at Claremont that I thought maybe I'll give it a go, and moved to Perth, which is quite daunting. It doesn't sound like much, but it really is when all you know is the country, and Perth is 3 hours away, but it feels like ages away. So I learned a lot about myself through that period of, especially just growing up a bit quicker. Wasn't much of a mama's boy, but I think we all were a little bit. So I learned the hard way. I remember I didn't check the mailbox for about 3 months, and I wondered why the power was going out. So
Yeah.
I learned some life lessons, and I learned a lot about football as well, and growing up pretty quickly.
And even back then in WA, mate, was like, and you're playing waffle, but like it's not at the AFL. Like, was the pressure then on to compete and perform, or was that more still based a lot on that country mateship and sort of just have a good time?
Mate, it was all about the good time. I remember I didn't think AFL was even a chance back then, to be honest. I thought playing league football was me, and I was quite happy to do that. And I was a Claremont man, and I was representing that club, which I love. So playing alongside my brother and playing against my younger brother who played at East Perth, that was me. And there was pressures, but there was kind of internal pressures that kind of spurred me on a bit and made me compete harder and go out there and try to win. But it wasn't until one or two AFL clubs sort of reached out in 2010, which is when I kind of started taking football and making a career out of it a bit more serious.
And how old were you back then, mate? 2010, like where did that leave you?
That was 2021. No, 21 when I got drafted, yeah. So it was mature, which is a mature age pick, and I went to I think I got to Melbourne at 22, so I was over that sort of period there. I can't remember actually.
Yeah.
22.
And what was that like for you, mate? Like, did the intensity then change for you, and how did you deal with that pressure and that again, moving away from not just, it sounds like not just your mum and dad, but also from your brothers, and
yeah.
I'd imagine there was quite a community in Perth that you would have felt almost at home still in WA.
Big time. Look, I had a really good group of mates that were basically family. It was very tight knit over there, and moving away from home to Perth was something I found tough, but thought it was part of my journey. And then next thing I know, I'm on my way to Melbourne. So that was quite daunting at the time, but obviously super excited to get drafted. Something I had dreamt of as a young kid, but thought it was probably, that dream might have been over now, being 22, with a lot of injuries on my belt as well. So it was a bit of a whirlwind few weeks. I remember, I think I got drafted. The next day I flew to New Zealand and met the Richmond boys on a training camp. So I was literally straight into it, and didn't have time to really think about what was going on. So, which could have been a little bit of a blessing, but I would have liked to have taken a deep breath and took it all in a bit more.
Can you recall at all, mate? Like, what was the stories you were telling yourself on that flight, like getting over?
It was. I remember. So I met up with Reece Conker, who got picked up in the same draft to Richmond, and I met his mum and dad at the airport, and I met him, and we jumped on a flight together, sat next to each other, never met each other, and we were teammates. So that made it easier, and him and I became really close. We moved into a house together straight away. We got a bit of an allowance to go shopping. We went and bought bloody brand new sheets and mattresses and all the colour. and then moved in together, and it was good having him there because obviously we're both from interstate, so being able to lean on each other a bit like that, and he became a bit of a brother to me as well.
And you sort of laugh about it, but how important is that for the young kids and for the mature age guys to have that support at those initial stages? Not just in AFL, I guess, with anything in life, but the right support networks.
Oh, it's massive. It's massive. So I think without Reece there, it would have been quite scary. And I mean, I can speak for Reece too. I was a bit older than him, so I'd say having me there was made it a little bit easier for him. And I know it was a lot easier for his parents letting him go with someone 3 years older than him. So that was a big thing. And then moving in together with Reece and another young kid who moved away from home, so that made it easier. But you just get stuck into training, you're living your dream. So you just got to remember that. And there was times when you did forget that, but you just got to remind yourself that this is it. Like, it is hard work, but it's a pretty good life, and I was very grateful to be there. I'm even more grateful now for the opportunity and what I learned out of it.
Mm. And were you, mate, like, were you your traditional footballer who loved it all the time, or were you sort of, you get the players that love footy and play it really well, but they've got a lot of other aspects of life that they're also very interested in, and then you've got some players that are just a lot more focused on football only. Like, were you a bit broader in terms of your view?
Yeah, quite broader in that sense, Luke. Football was never my number one thing. It was sort of, friendships and growing up, just surfing and having a good time. And I had a bit of a growth spurt when I was 21 and got pretty tall. So I became a bit of a big lad playing in the ruck, and all of a sudden I'm getting interest from AFL clubs. So I definitely started taking football more seriously then, and I definitely took football very seriously while I was being paid to do it. But it was never something that I defined me, so to speak.
Mm.
I had a lot of other interests outside of football, and I never really thought football would last forever, per se, like a lot of players think. I thought it was just a part of my journey, and you can get caught up in it at times, and you can get caught up in all the stuff that comes with it too. So I think I was quite a mature head back then. Looking back now, I could have easily gone off track and thought it was my life, but I think that's what kind of kept me sane through those injury-plagued years at Richmond.
Yeah, mate. And I think for some people, like, what people don't get in the football, Tom, and you know better than I, but for a lot of players, it's less than 10% of your livelihood of playing AFL, even if you get a good career. So it's not like it's forever, and the need to have life outside's really important.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it like that. So I think everyone gets a bit caught up as an AFL player, and that being it. I mean, it is everything when you're growing up, because that's the pinnacle. That's where you want to get to, and it's quite an interesting industry where, yeah, you're right. It's only from sort of 20 to 30 that you're professional and getting paid for it. So you're still a kid from 20 to 30. So
yeah.
Life starts after football, especially in my case. I think it was an awesome experience, but I never thought it was going to be something I'd do forever, not even going to sort of coaching and stuff. So, but yeah, you're right. Like, lucky there's a lot of welfare surrounding AFL footballers now that sort of stress the fact of studying and making sure you've got something to flow into when you finish or when you get delisted. Because I think the average career is like 2 or 3 years, so you just got to be prepared.
Yeah,
good for your headspace as well, like studying or applying yourself somewhere else, a different trade or a different industry.
And mate, the music, like, we'll backtrack to the music. Is that always, like, growing up, has that always been into your life? Because it's sort of, and how important was that even through the stressful times?
Yeah,
through football.
Yeah, music's been a huge part of my life. Growing up, I played guitar from a young age, and jamming with my brothers in my room in the garage was a huge outlet and just a fun thing that we used to do. And I did a lot of production stuff while I was at Richmond, and then that carried into my time at the Swans, and it was an outlet for me, and it was a way of switching off. Just jumping on my laptop or guitar, my headphones on, and making music, and even just listening to music was sort of my escape, and kept me sane, kept me in line, and it was just fun. Loved it.
And was that something that you'd considered even when you were playing at Richmond and Sydney? Was that something you were considering as not a career, but as something you wanted to pursue more seriously once footy had finished?
Yeah, it was. And it semi-overlapped into my time at the Swans. I started a little project called Kayex with one of my best mates from Perth. who moved over to Sydney, and we started writing music together in sort of the back end of, actually probably the start of 2016, which was my last year at the Swan. So that was my sort of off-field thing to do, was the music production, and I ended up retiring because of injury at the end of 16, and then diving headfirst into the band, and we did a lot of travelling and writing together in my first few years out of the game, and it's my main thing now. I mean, it's a tough industry at the moment, the arts industry, because of the C word that we speak of, COVID. So it's tough, but the silver lining is we've been able to write a lot of music in this time, and although we kind of lack inspiration because we're just stuck in a house together, it's been good to sort of just map out the next few years and put some goals in place, because that's something we've never really done. We've kind of just written music and chucked it out, let that do the talking, but we're just sort of mapping it out a bit better now, building a bit of a business around it. So it's been good to take a deep breath and just sort of write music, and because that's the one thing that sort of has kept both of us sane in these times, and it gets me out of bed in the morning.
And what is it, Tommy, what's that feel like for you in a bit more depth, in terms of, especially through COVID, of how you've been going about your days and staying creative, even though the outlet to perform and that's been really taken away from you? So, like, is it just are you treating it more like it's just a bit more like a job and more planty and more forward view now, as opposed to sort of just doing what you think you'll do it day by day?
Yeah, because I guess ultimately we do it so we can put on a show and play our own music. So it's definitely been hard to sort of motivate yourself, and I think if I was doing it on my own, it would have been a lot harder. It would be a lot harder. I think we kind of the motivation sort of ebbs and flows a bit, and one day I might be a bit more motivated than Palasi, and vice versa. So we'll kind of push each other in that sense, and yeah, we'll treat it like a job. We'll dedicate a couple of days a week, and just, whether that's filming a film clip or just writing emails to record labels, sending our music around, or writing music, we'll dedicate time and treat it like a job, because essentially we want it to be our full-time jobs, and we think in a real world it could be.
Yeah, and is there still that sense of, when you're like that, the music especially, Tommy, is there still that excitement between you two in what you're doing, and is it still as energetic as it was when you first started?
Yeah, there's still excitement. We're definitely a bit. We've learned a lot about the industry and sort of where we're both at, and we don't take it as seriously anymore, because it's such a volatile sort of industry where I think our first song we released sort of went really well, and we thought, oh, this is pretty easy, getting radio players and all the labels in the world emailing us, and we're like, wow, how good is this? And then 3 years later, we're sort of, nothing's really changed, but we've learned a lot about how the industry, and we've learned to just kind of go back to the basics of why we started doing it, which was because we both love music, and we're both creative, and it's our way of expressing ourselves. So we still treat it like a business, and we still have ambitions, but it's one of those things. You release a song and it might not get heard. It might get heard, but it's just one of those things. You just got to keep moving and keep pushing yourself. There's definitely the spark still there, Luke, to answer your question. We love it. We had a great session the other night, Sunday night. We just started jamming together. Next thing, it's 2 a.m, and we're like, bloody hell, we're going to get some sleep Monday tomorrow, which is a good sign. And we came out with two new songs. So the thing that keeps us going and keeps us ticking along is finishing music and releasing it, I think, because that's probably the most exciting part about it now, without being able to do shows. So we can do that. That's in our control.
Well, I think, mate, what I'm hearing from our chat is there's an underlying, and this probably gets to the mental health discussion that I think we have, but the football and injuries especially are not in your control. Like so much of that, so many careers get cut short because of injury, and that's not yours. And the record labels and how people respond to you isn't yours to hold on to. It's yours to watch, and you can control how you show up, but you can't control how people are going to accept what you do. So I'm interested, mate, in your mental health story because I know you're now an ambassador for Are You OK? Yeah. And I'm really interested to see how you got there, but what's been your journey to get you to become an ambassador?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, Luke. It's had its ups and downs along the football journey in particular. So moving to Melbourne was hard in itself, just being away from home and away from the family. So learning to deal with that and learning to deal with the pressures of the media and the internal pressures of the football club was something I learned, but something that took a while to learn. And I was quite naive to the whole mental health thing. I didn't really know much about it and didn't know much about the symptoms. And, you know, some mornings I'd be struggling to get out of bed and some days I'd be, you know, find it hard to breathe properly. And I was like, what's wrong with the air in Melbourne? You know, I was so naive to anxiety and depression. So it took a bit of courage to kind of go talk to someone, because back then, 2012, I think it was there's still that solid stigma and that sort of toxic masculinity sort of look, especially down on depression and especially on anxiety. So, but telling Damien Hardwick about my issues, which back then it was depression. So it was the biggest weight lifted off my shoulders when I told him, because I kind of got that bit of relief, and I got my sort of X factor back on the training track, and then started playing some games. And it was an ongoing thing back then. Like, I got some good help, and to this day I still talk to a psychologist, and that's the best thing I can do. I speak to a psychologist now once a week, and we're just really good friends, and we both sort of chuck ideas at each other. I think we help each other a lot. So it's something that sort of led me into Are You OK? And I love wrapping my arms around people. I love empathy, and I'm big on checking in and having a beer with my mate. So we just sort of found each other chatting one day with Are You OK? And myself, and then the rest is history. I'm here now representing them, and it's a perfect fit, and I love what they're doing. I think they love what I do, and the vulnerability.
Mm. Can you go back, mate, and, like, you know, for a young guy or whatever now, like, when you start to check in and feel like it's a struggle to get out of bed, and you start to see a couple of those signs, you know, and from the Are You OK work that you do, mate, what's the first thing you'd get a young guy or a young girl to do?
I think it starts with just sort of talking to someone, whether it be a friend or family member, and someone that's sort of maybe a bit older, a bit more mature than you, and maybe been through life and potentially experience some of the stuff that they're going through, I think. But as soon as you open up and as soon as you're vulnerable, you just kind of open doors and people point you in the right direction. And I think the more you bottle it up, the worse it will get. So it's just, if you start talking and just tell one person, that will usually they've got a story that might sort of trigger you to go get more help or talk to someone else. So yeah, that's the biggest thing, is not hide behind it, not be ashamed, be proud and be vulnerable.
And how did it feel for you, mate? Like, when the first person you spoke to and actually created that conversation, like, what was the feeling for you like?
Yeah, it's huge weight lifted off the shoulder. I remember talking to a teammate, and I was just like, mate, I'm struggling with all this load and like the pressures, and I kind of feel I've got no energy. And he was like, mate, me too, you know? Like, here's another young kid from the country. I was like, wow, how good's that to hear? Like, yeah, he was just constantly on edge, and I was like, mate, I'm the same. Like, what's going on? And then we started learning about it together, and I think that brought us together as friends. I remember the day, and we still talk about it today, like how we continue to check in on each other. I think once you've had that first initial conversation, it's you want to check in. It's not a chore anymore. So, and that just leads to more honest conversations, and that leads to help and helping other people as well.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, mate, in terms of. And do you feel like the more you can talk about it, the more help you get, the better capacity you've got then to cope with the challenging days?
Yeah, absolutely. The bigger your network of help and support, the stronger you're going to be. And yeah, it's always going to be challenges, especially now with what's going on. I think you wouldn't be human if you weren't struggling or indirectly or knew someone that was struggling. So, even like I do a bit of carpentry work as well to pay the bills, and I think the suicide rate in construction is like double the normal. So that's one of the industries that we're trying to sort of crack into now, because it's still that sort of toxic masculinity going on building sites, and everyone's a bit too tough to talk, and we will crack them, but that's our next aim, and that's why the stuff that we're doing with John Holland is so great, and sort of I love how progressive they are, and it's really awesome. I was quite surprised to hear from them, and you and I have been doing a bit of work with them, which has been great.
Yeah, mate, and I agree. I think, and if we can get, especially men, we're talking men and suicides and depression, but I think if we can get, men and we can get dads to open up and have an authentic voice and embrace themselves as they are, that then shifts parenting to a new generation and a new set of beliefs, a new set of values that the young kids can be vulnerable, can open up, they can cry, they can hug, they can show affection and feel okay to do that, not to have to suck it up and just get on with it and not show any of that because that's weakness. So I feel like we need generations to really start to kick in and create that narrative.
100%. Imagine seeing your dad just sort of open up and be vulnerable. We can all say that we cherish our relationship with our parents and we idolise them. So if they open up and if they set the standard of, be vulnerable, show your emotions and show your love, show you care, hug each other, tell each other you love them. It sets the best example. And it does come, it comes a lot stronger from a man and a dad, like you just said.
Yeah, mate, and even things like for me, when I've got 5 kids that I'm trying to do is for my kids to hear me say sorry to my wife that I've made a mistake or that I was wrong on that, and to say sorry to my kids and to admit your faults, because everyone's got faults and they're imperfect, but to be okay with those imperfections and then to see the kids do that as well. I just think there's when you can start to take the mask off and just show up how you want to show up or what's authentic to you, there's such power in that. And you and I have spoken, a little bit about vulnerability, mate, but I'd love for you to talk about the power of vulnerability and the importance of it for us.
Yeah, it's the best tool you've got, I think. Opening up and showing your cards, I think, is a huge thing to be able to do, and especially if you care about the person that you're talking to. I think I pride myself on sort of being vulnerable and open, and I'm quite proud of my story because it is a success story. I'm getting help. I got help, and I'm doing well, and I think getting it back onto that even playing ground and saying that something's not going that well for you. You're not sleeping well. You might need a beer. You might, and then it kind of opens that door for the other person to kind of jump in and say, yeah, you know what, I'm not sleeping well either, and then you can start chatting, and that's the biggest thing. It's there's a lot of guys. I've got a few mates that still struggle with it, that because I've been vulnerable and because I've spoken about my story, they feel comfortable talking to me, and that's why it's so powerful, and that's why it's so important, because it's a bit of a selfless thing being vulnerable, because it could save someone else because they're comfortable to come and talk to you, and then depending on the circumstances, you can point them in the right direction, or you can give them some advice, or even just give them a hug and have a beer with them.
And do you think, Tommy, does it, do you feel like it creates resilience within you because when you've got less to hold on to and you've got less attachments or less of an ego or status of how you believe people need to see you, there's less you're holding on to of feeling like it needs to be perfect, the more real you can be?
Yeah, that's a huge one, and that's something I've sort of been working on myself. Is it's okay to be anxious sometimes. Like you're a human being, and you're a thoughtful, sort of sensitive guy. So just own it. That's Tom Derickx. Tom Derickx can be a bit shy and a bit anxious at times. He is a laid back country boy, but you're allowed to be anxious. You're allowed to have shit days. You're allowed to be a bit down and not want to talk to anyone. That's me, and that's what what I've been working on, is owning that, because life just becomes easy. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to hide anything. You can just live and be yourself. And it's harder with what's going on with social media and stuff. But all we see is, and all people portray, is that perfect life. And I think the more vulnerable and the more real you are, the less strain you've got on yourself to be that perfect person, because it's pretty cheesy and cliche, but we're all perfect and imperfect in the same sort of ways, and celebrating imperfections is the best thing you can do, and like pulling the piss out of yourself and owning it is the best thing you can do as well.
And it like that perfection, Tom, or that perceived perfection, that within that comes a lot of stress, anxiety, and pressure within itself. Like for someone that was on an AFL list, who's a good-looking guy who many would have perceived as a quintessential perfect Aussie bloke, again, to try to hold that up for many people when it's not natural, brings its own element of suffering, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. You're kind of on paper like you got this perfect life, and there was a time where I was trying to be that guy, but it just got too much, and celebrating my imperfections was one thing that kind of brought me back down and back into that sort of level playing field with my mates and and family members, where we could have a laugh and joke about some of my imperfections, because that's our advantage over other people, is our imperfections, because they're all different, and if we're all trying to be a bit perfect, then it's just a stressful world, Luke. So, having a laugh and joking about those imperfections, and letting people know that you're not this perfect guy. Life is good, but everyone's got shit going on. So, that's the best way to live your life, and let people know that it's not all perfect. Everyone's got issues and imperfections.
Yeah, and is there a push, do you reckon, Tommy, is there a push in social media where we sort of need to cut through that shit a little bit and let go of some of those perfect images or the perfect bodies, and just embrace the ordinary and really enjoy that and celebrate people who are doing that?
I think so. I've noticed on social media lately it's becoming quite. I don't know if it's it's a trend or if it's in vogue, but celebrating sort of your downfalls or your imperfections, however you want to say it. But I mean, a year ago, Instagram was a bad place to be, because it just, everything you looked at kind of made your life look like it was pretty pathetic. So now there's a lot more honest, funny stuff going on, and people being a bit more real with it. I think social media can be a powerful tool if it's used in the right way, and I'm trying to use my platform to portray the real me. And yeah, so I've got some cool stuff going on in my life, and yeah, I've got some stuff that I'm working on as well. So quite happy to balance those two, because both those things are a big part of who I am. Yeah.
Yeah, and I checked your Insta out, mate, and what I loved about yours was that there was pictures of you, doing the music, doing the Kayex stuff, but there was also pictures of your chisels and showing that you're still building and you're not trying to sort of create this inauthentic that you're this rock star and that's all you ever do and it's full time. That there's real pictures of what you're up to day.
Yeah, I want my social media to represent me and who I am, and sometimes I think I should post a photo of my bank account just to let everyone know I'm not a rock star, So, but no, I just love. I've got a lot of passions, and some people think I've got too much stuff going on and I'm trying too many things. But I'm just passionate about life, and I love trying new things and learning. And yeah, I'm a carpenter as well, and I've been trying to chuck that out there a bit more and bring that up into the cool areas, which it could be. And that's the whole thing about the construction site and the toxic environment it can be, and trying to reflect that into my social media is what I'm aiming for now. And it's a reflection of me and what I do.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. I think that's important. Yeah. And are you okay days coming up, mate? It's going to be, when this goes up, it'll be the next day. What can people do to get involved and to have a voice and try to really propel, especially now more than ever, the mental health discussions and the connection of friendship around, people's, well-being?
Yeah, this year in particular, it's super important. I mean, it's a day, and we celebrate the day, and by celebrate I mean we sort of check in on our mates, and I think it's going to be a bit of an ongoing thing this year, and it's all about how to follow up after those conversations, and a lot of it is about the warning signs, and everyone's got good friends, and they can kind of see if there's something going on, and that's the time to ask. I think it's easy to just text someone going, how are you going? Are you okay? And they go, yeah, all good. It's honing in on the friends that you're a little bit worried about, or the friends that are sort of stuck in Melbourne and haven't seen their family for a while, and having to think about who you're going to ask and what you're going to ask them, and also having to think about what you're going to do if they say they're struggling a bit, and learn about where you can point them and what you should say to them, and what numbers to give them, and just learn some little tips and advice to give them. Because yes, it is easy to ask, "Are you okay?" But it's more about what to say and how to follow up, and sort of maintain that connection. Because once they do open up, and once you do open up, it's an ongoing thing. Not just the one.
Yeah. Day. And I think, mate, what I know about it, and what I know about, mindfulness and sort of mental health is that validation of just listening, not having to solve their problems, but simply sitting with them and being present with them and allowing them to talk is such a critical first step that's initially all you need to do in the first instance, isn't it? Really, just is to listen.
100%, Luke. Just listen. Yeah, you don't have to know the answers, and it's listening is the biggest thing, and just being there, and just pausing and thinking about it, and spending some time with them. That's a start, and that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, and it's not you're right. Once you get that relationship, it's not an instant fix, or they might not even open up to you in the first conversation. It might be the third or fourth conversation, and that's what I love about what you've said before, Tommy, about the follow up. Or if you're seeing some signs, not to just ask once and go, "Oh no, they must be fine." Especially in the men, it's just the continual, I guess, embedding of support and conversation around, "Are you okay?"
Exactly. Yeah, the follow up's critical, and it's also just be prepared for someone to potentially ask you how you're going, and prepare yourself to open up if you are struggling a bit, because it's the best thing you can do. I think we always think about what we're going to say to our mates, but have a think about what you're going to say if you get asked, and if you're going to have the courage to sort of let it all out and be vulnerable. That's one thing that we're honing in on this year.
And there's every chance that if you do that, Tommy, that the person that maybe is asking you is almost wanting the reciprocal chance to have a conversation as well sometimes, like what you said with your mate at the footy club who was actually going through the same thing.
Yeah, I think if they're asking, they're obviously, they know what it's about, and they know they've heard about Are You OK, and that they probably can relate to it. So, yeah, if they're asking, they probably want to have a chat to you as well. So it's really important to be vulnerable, and I think everyone's got something going on. So just have a chat and solve some stuff. Talk. If worst case, or if there's nothing going on, then talk about a mate that you might be worried about. Think about ways you can get around them and help them out, and things you can do to help them and support them.
And to finish with, Tommy, I think from my perspective, and I'd love to get your thoughts on how important do you think well-being is as trying to prevent, a mental health illness, the importance of community, of being outdoors, like you surfing, being creative. Like, what are some of the things you'd say, even if you're not experiencing depression or anxiety, but are important to you, especially now in a lockdown or in a COVID environment, that people need to be doing to staying really mentally fit?
Yeah, I think it's about being proactive instead of reactive. I think we've got enough knowledge now to realise what the symptoms and what could be going on and in your own head, and especially with the symptoms, you don't want to sort of start getting them and then start thinking of ways to get out of it. It's more about being mindful and having hobbies and being creative and having outlets and catching up with friends before you kind of, not let you going to go into it, but think about ways to sort of steer clear of the mental health issues. I think that's important. And there's so many outlets, whether it be sport, music, catching up with mates. I'm right into mindfulness at the moment, Luke. You'd love that. I'm doing a bit of Vedic meditation, which for me was something that sort of controlled my anxieties, and it gives me a lot more energy. So just learning and researching little ways to kind of steer clear of it.
Yeah, man, I just think for me, it's a massive conversation, because so much of our energy and so much of how we show up's in our mind. And when we can be in like really good mental shape, like really sharp, and I always look at it, Tommy, like physical wellness. Like when we're in really good mental shape and we're doing stuff that we love and we've got passions and hobbies, we feel safe and secure. We've got support networks. We're present. We're aware of others, and we've got we're almost of service to others, and we've got the capacity to think about other people and give back to them. It's like being physically in really good shape, and you've got the capacity for more. And that's the way I try to look at it with people is let's just not try to fix it if there's a problem, or when if you get cancer, then get healthy. Let's get really healthy mentally so the chances minimize, but we can also just show up better.
Mate, spot on. Find something fun to do. Find something someone fun to hang out with. Build that sort of community wherever you are. I know it's hard during these times, especially down in Victoria. So, do something fun and get mentally fit. That's the biggest thing.
Perfect, mate. Yeah. Mate, I appreciate the conversation.
Look, thank you for me.
And I'm looking forward to listening to see where Kayex goes. I was actually listening to him on the weekend when I was cleaning the shed and really enjoyed it, mate. So it's a good thing you got going there.
I'm glad you liked it. Thank you for listening. Yeah, we're going to continue on the dream and see where we end up. But we're having a ball, so that's the main thing.
Tommy, thanks very much, mate.
Thank you, Luke. Good to chat.